Migrants have always been key to the Indian economy, and according to the World Bank, India is one of the largest recipients of workers' remittances. The government now plans to replace the 1983 Immigration Act with a fresh legislation, and also there is a migration policy which is in the draft stages. To talk with us about this, we have Mr. J. John, who is the Executive Director of the Centre for Education and Communication. Thank you so much for meeting us, sir. So what are the key drawbacks of the 1983 Act which need to be addressed now?
It had one major drawback is the one of creating dual kind of a citizenship itself by way of providing two types of passports to the immigrants. One which does not require immigrant clearance, and the second one requires immigrant clearance. And those people who require immigrant clearance was those people who have not passed class 10 and who were also going to selected 17 countries, including the most of the Gulf countries. So the migration policy at that time created this kind of a dualism, which was a process of discrimination against the citizens of the country, because everyone was going for work and there should not have been that kind of a distinction. And we wanted that distinction to be taken away. The second thing which has happened later, quite recently, is by way of promulgating a restriction on the mobility of women if they are not above 30 years age.
There are also concerns about inbound and outbound labor. The 83 Immigration Act looks only at outbound labor. Does the new policy seek to look at inbound labor as well?
To the best of our knowledge, the government of India is refusing to accept the fact that India is the 8th largest recipient of migrants in the world, and more than 5.7 million workers from nearby countries are working in India, and their interests, the rights of the in-migrants, are not presumably being addressed in the new policy document.
So you mentioned some of the archaic provisions of the 83 Act, like the 30-year age limit for women. Is the government looking in that direction to sort of bring about certain changes in that?
Government says that they may do it, but I'm not very clear about the 30 age bar, because that has not been clearly stated.
So is it true that the new policy is largely looking at temporary or seasonal migration instead of permanent migration?
I think it is more or less true, because government is also in the new migration policy, though it is not very clearly stating it, is making Indian law compatible to the WTO regime. And the World Trade Organization in the GATS mode 4 negotiations talks exclusively about the skilled migrants who can go for a certain period of time and then return.
In any migration policy or in any immigration act, there is a key issue of civil rights and human rights. What is it that civil society groups like your organization are actually demanding now?
See, there are a few international legal instruments which the government of India should be complying with while formulating a migration policy. And the one is the 1990 UN Convention on the Rights of the Migrant and Their Families. The second is 2 conventions of the ILO, which the government should be complying with.
So thank you so much for speaking with Mint. Thank you.